In section 7 of unit 3, we're going to do a little bit more work on the conditional and related statements. And as we've often mentioned, repetition is the mother of memory. I'm going to have you copy this into your homework log. So, as we mentioned in our flipped classroom lesson, we have the conditional, P, then Q. Now the converse of that is Q, then P. Now the inverse is not P, then not Q, and the contrapositive is not Q, then not P. And you might put these lines here that we said that the conditional and the contrapositive are equivalent, and the converse and the inverse are equivalent. As a little summary of what we've said, so as we do the homework, this will be in your mind. All right, we'll go on and pick up from there back to our regular lesson, going on to item number 1. Now here we are asked, write the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive of the following statements. And basically, I think the strategy best would be to identify your statements. If goblins come out to play, this is going to be P. Then it is Halloween. That's going to be Q. So again, you're going to follow for the converse, reverse them. Q, then P. Then for the inverse, you're going to negate P, then Q. And for the contrapositive, you're going to negate Q, then negate P. So I'm not going to show them all to you here, but you will see the first one. Select which one is the answer. So for the converse, it's going to be letter D. Now see what you can find for the inverse. And that would be letter C. So the contrapositive then, take a moment, letter A. Okay. Now for number 2, what we'll do to shorten this a little bit is we'll use the lowercase letter A for the converse, lowercase letter B for the inverse, and lowercase letter C for the contrapositive. And just put the lowercase letters after these statements, finding first the converse, then the inverse, then the contrapositive. So we'll let you do that and then check on your answers. Well, after spending some time, I see the only one that we can write here is for the converse is letter D. As I look for the inverse, which is if it is not broken, then it does not need to be fixed, is not proper in these other ones. So I'm assuming as you do your homework, these will change somewhat as you put your answer A in, then you get to see the other choices. Okay, let's go on. Now, for example 3, as you look at it, our initial statement is not P, then not Q. But they're saying that's the initial. So what would be the converse of this statement? The inverse, and then the contrapositive. So look at your chart. It's just a matter of matching things up and put your answers here. We'll call this like part 1 and part 2 and part 3 of example 3. So this one was a little easier because you have your statement and then the converse is just switching them around, and then the inverse is the negation of a negation, which makes it in a sense a positive without the negation signs. So for this first one, the letter selected over here would be D. All right, let's go on. Now for example 4, this is again part of our earlier review. Pick out the statements A, B, or C that illustrates which are equivalent. And we had said B. The conditional and contrapositive are equivalent. The converse and the inverse are equivalent. Again, we don't expect you to memorize all this, but we do expect you to have reference and can follow to the answer. All right, for number 5 now. A dodecagon implies that it is a polygon with 12 sides. Now we want you to write this statement in the form of P, then Q. And it's a matter of selecting what we have here. Now remember, sometimes you can add a few words. You can even change the order a little bit if that's appropriate. Let's see what you end up with. Well, letter D. If the figure is a dodecagon, then it is a polygon with 12 sides. And I've said this before, as you try the homework and you get a wrong answer, then you just try another example and get it till it's correct. So you can earn 100% on your homework. Now, this one is very similar to number 5. Give it a shot and see what you get. Again, this is P, then Q. So if a figure is an octagon, then it's a polygon with 8 sides. Again, when you do the homework, sometimes it might be the same example, but the order of these letters may be different. Give it your best shot. Now, for number 7, as you read it, this is in the form of what we call the biconditional. P, and our arrows now go in both directions. And this involves a special truth table. So let's create that together and have it again here in our notes as a reference. So setting it up is pretty straightforward. We keep this in our standard form here. And this, of course, indicates the biconditional. Now, in the biconditional, it's true if both values are the same. So this is true, and this is true. But if they're not both the same, then it's false. Again, I wouldn't expect you to remember this, but have a reference to it. And this should be in your flipped classroom notes as well. So now as we look at this and we say 6 equals 5, that is false. 9 equals 8, and that is false. So we have two false statements. And again, this that I have underlined in red indicates the biconditional. Then this equals true. All right, we'll go on. Now, in this section, we're only doing 8 questions. So this is our last one. And we're asked to determine whether the statements are contrary or consistent. Well, contrary means they don't make sense because it's not true, because of situations that exist where something is said, but then there's something that doesn't agree with it and fit in. That would be contrary. And then if it was consistent, then it fits within the situation. So let's take a look at this. A man has been to all 7 continents. This same person has never been to Antarctica. Well, Antarctica is one of the continents. So these statements would be contrary. Okay, well, we have one more lesson, and then we'll have our unit test. But hopefully you're asking questions as needed and staying up to date with your homework. Remember, you can always repeat a question that you didn't have correct by selecting a new question and then getting it right, and we give you, or the software gives you, the best score. All right.